There had been no advance warning, apart from an army vehicle that had appeared one blustery afternoon 3 weeks earlier. This in itself was strange, as there was no proper road to the village, only a lane that became rather muddy after rain. And it didn't go anywhere, apart from down to the tiny harbour, where there were currently no fishing boats, the war having made fishing too dangerous in these waters. The open-topped Tilly army vehicle had driven down the one street, past the church, the schoolhouse, the pub and the row of cottages, to where the village ended in the overgrown track with steps down to the harbour. An officer, wearing a smart peaked army cap, had climbed out, looked around, and was heard by Mary Norton, who was getting in her washing before it rained, to say, "It will have to do. Luckily there's nothing of historic value here." She never bothered to pass along this statement, or the inhabitants might have been better prepared when the post office van came sloshing through puddles to deposit the mail at the village post office, come village shop. Mrs. Jenkins, the postmistress/shop owner, had looked at the pile of letters bearing no stamps. "More rubbish from the government," she had said to Fred Hammond, the driver. "I wonder what it'll be this time." "Probably cutting our sugar ration again," he said, "or the meat ration. But I bet that don't affect you so much out here with your chickens and pigs." "We do all right, I suppose," she said, "although the rats keep getting at our eggs, bloody nuisances." "He don't have to worry too much, do he?" The post office driver nodded up the street. "Him at the big house. Don't he still have cows?" "No, they're long gone," she said. "Government took 'em. Now we don't have that much more than we do. A couple of pigs and chickens, but a fine lot of fruit and veggies, and I must say he's good enough to share with us." "Well, he should, seeing as you're his tenants, right? You pay him every month to live here, don't you?" "We do, I suppose." Mrs. Jenkins smoothed down her apron. "Now I better get that lazy-bones Ned to take these around." It turned out that the letters were not about the sugar ration. Instead, they said, "To the inhabitants of Tydeham, this is to inform you that His Majesty's Armed Forces have need of your village to further the war effort. It has been requisitioned for invasion drills, commencing October 8th, 1943. You have 2 weeks to remove your belongings and vacate the village. Every adult occupant of Tydeham is required to attend a meeting at the village hall on September 24th at 8 p.m, where there will be further explanation and questions will be answered." "Bloody hell," Ed Jenkins muttered when his wife showed him the letter. "They've got some nerve, haven't they? Turning folks out of their homes they've lived in for generations." "I suppose it is for the war effort, Ed," Mrs. Jenkins said, trying to be brave, but not really any happier with the news than her husband had been. "They'll have to rehouse us, won't they? They can't just turn us out into the street." Ed shrugged. "I hear that's what they've been doing in the cities that were bombed. Oh, your house just got flattened? Too bad. Don't you have a relative to live with?" "We could go to my sister in Dorchester," Mrs. Jenkins said. "They have that spare bedroom now that young Jack—" She did not complete the sentence. Young Jack had gone down with his ship. "They'll have to rehouse us," Ed said firmly. "What about my vegetable patch, eh? I haven't harvested half the stuff yet, and there's the taters and onions I've put in." He stood up resolutely. "I'm going to have a word with Mr. Bennington. If anyone can set these army blokes straight, he can." He grabbed his jacket and shoved his cap onto his head, then stomped off up the street, past the church, and along the narrow path that led to what locals called the Big House. Its real name was Tydeham Grange. It was an elegant stone manor house set in grounds that had been manicured before the war. Now the croquet lawn had become a veggie patch. There were sheep grazing on the parkland behind the house, and a pigsty had been built beyond the stables. Ed met Mr. Bennington himself coming out of one of the barns, carrying a pitchfork. "You've read the letter, have you?" Ed called to him. "I'm afraid I have, and I've already been on the telephone to London. It seems there's not much we can do, Ed. They have to practice invasion tactics somewhere, and we seem to fit the bill. Come inside and have a cup of tea."